Pull up next to a fully loaded semi at a red light and watch what happens when the light turns green. The engine climbs, then drops, then climbs again. The driver's right hand barely stops moving, and by the time that truck is doing 30 miles an hour, it feels like it's already been through more gears than your car has in total, because it probably has. A big rig can run 18 forward gears. 18. Your car gets by with 6, maybe 8, and that feels like more than enough. So what on earth is a truck doing with 18? Why would anyone need that many? And here's the part almost nobody tells you. That famous 18 speed isn't actually the whole story. Most trucks on the road today aren't even running 18 gears, and the direction the industry is heading right now might mean the end of shifting altogether. Stick with me, because to understand any of this, we have to start with a much simpler question. What is a gear actually for? This is cab life. All right, forget trucks for a second. A gear does one job. It trades speed for force or force for speed. A low gear gives you enormous pulling power and almost no speed. A high gear gives you speed but hardly any pull. You've been doing this your whole life on a bicycle. Low gear to grind up a hill, high gear to fly along the flat. Now here's where a truck gets complicated. A big diesel engine only makes its best power and burns fuel most efficiently inside a very narrow window of engine speed. On a large diesel, that sweet spot might be just a few hundred revs wide, somewhere around 11 to 1800 RPM. Drop below it and the engine lugs and struggles. Climb above it and you're just burning fuel for nothing. In a car, that barely matters. 6 gears cover it easily because a car is light and its needs don't change much. But a truck is a completely different animal. Empty, it might weigh 12 tons. Fully loaded in the States, it can hit 80,000 pounds, around 36 tons. Same machine carrying 3 times its own weight on flat motorway, up brutal mountain grades, and crawling through city traffic. Keeping that engine inside its happy few hundred revs across all of that is genuinely hard. And it is the entire reason a truck carries so many gears. It wasn't always like this. Roll back to the 1920s and 30s and trucks had maybe 4 or 5 gears, and that was it. No synchromesh, no clever electronics, just a crash gearbox that fought you if you got it wrong. Drivers had to match engine speed to the gearbox perfectly on every change, a technique called double declutching. Get it wrong and everyone within half a mile heard the grinding. These were skilled operators. Trucking was a craft. But those early trucks didn't need more gears because they weren't moving fast and they weren't hauling much. Through the 40s and 50s, as engines grew and loads got heavier, transmissions crept up to around 8 speeds. And then the motorways got built, the engines got bigger, the legal weight limits climbed, and suddenly 8 gears weren't enough. So the industry started adding gears. But here's the thing that surprises people. Adding gears was never really about going faster. It was about efficiency. Remember that narrow power band. The more gears you have, the smaller the step between one ratio and the next. And smaller steps mean that every time you change gear, the engine only drops a little, so it stays inside that efficient window almost all the time. Bigger gaps and the engine falls out of its sweet spot on every shift. It bogs or it screams. Why does that matter so much? Because fuel is the single biggest running cost for almost any trucking operation. A 1% improvement in fuel economy, spread across a large fleet running hundreds of thousands of miles a year, adds up to serious money. So when finer gearing buys even a small efficiency gain, the industry pays attention fast. And that hunger for finer steps is exactly what created the 18-speed. But here's where it gets clever. Engineers did not get to 18 by cramming 18 sets of gears into one enormous box. What they actually did is far more elegant, and it's the key to this whole story. They used 2 tricks. The first is a range change. It splits the entire gearbox into a low range and a high range. So with the flick of a switch, every gear you have suddenly does double duty. That alone roughly doubles your ratios without doubling the size of the box. The second trick is a splitter. It divides each individual gear into two closely spaced ratios, a direct one and a slightly higher overdrive one, so every gear can be nudged up or down a fraction. Take a small base gearbox, add a range change, add a splitter, and the math does something beautiful. You go from around 5 gears to 18. That is exactly how the legendary Eaton Fuller 18-speed works, and it has been the backbone of American long-haul trucking for decades. The shift pattern looks genuinely intimidating the first time you see it. A double H layout with a deep crawler gear at the bottom for pulling away under maximum load. Learning to row through it without missing a shift is a real skill, and drivers who can do it are rightly proud of it. Europe took a slightly different path, settling around 12 to 16 speeds. But here's the reframe. That 18 speed is an icon, not the norm. Plenty of trucks run 10 or 13 speeds, and more today run 12. Because something happened that quietly forced the whole industry to rethink gearing all over again. Emissions rules. This is the chapter people outside the industry almost never hear about, and it's one of the biggest reasons gearboxes kept getting more sophisticated. Starting in the 90s and tightening ever since, emission standards clamped down hard. In America, the EPA kept raising the bar. In Europe, the standards marched from Euro 1 all the way to Euro 6. Each generation demanded dramatically cleaner exhaust. To hit those targets, engineers had to redesign how the engine burned fuel. And there was a side effect almost nobody talks about. Those cleaner combustion designs made the engine's efficient rev range even narrower than before. A modern low-emission diesel is astonishingly clean, but it is fussier about exactly where it wants to sit. And a narrower sweet spot means you need even finer, more precise gear ratios to keep the engine parked in it. So just as 18 speeds look like plenty, the rules pushed engineers back to the drawing board. Which brings us to the biggest change in transmission technology in 30 years, the automated manual, or AMT. Now, this is not the same as the automatic in your car. There's no torque converter, no slush box. An AMT is a proper manual gearbox with the same gears and clutch inside it, except a computer and a set of actuators now do the clutching and the shifting for you. The driver never touches a clutch pedal or that double H pattern. The system reads engine load, road speed, the grade of the hill, the weight of the trailer, and dozens of other inputs, and picks the ideal gear by itself. Eaton called theirs Ultra Shift. Volvo built the I-Shift. Mercedes had Power Shift, Mack the M-Drive, Scania the Opticruise. And when these first appeared, a lot of experienced drivers absolutely hated them. Men who had spent years mastering that intimidating shift pattern felt like the computer was taking away the very thing that made them skilled professionals. And in the early days, some of that was fair. The first systems could be hesitant, second-guessing themselves halfway up a steep grade and grabbing the wrong gear, but the technology improved fast. Today's systems are genuinely brilliant. They keep the engine locked in its efficient band more consistently than any human can. They cut driver fatigue on long hauls, and the fuel data consistently shows a well-calibrated AMT beating even a skilled manual driver over distance. The software simply hits that narrow window more precisely than a hand on a lever ever could. That is exactly why a modern 12-speed automated box can do the job that used to take an 18-speed manual. New drivers coming into the industry today often never learn a manual at all. And in Europe especially, a manual gearbox in a new long-haul truck is now a rare thing. So does the number just keep climbing forever? More gears, more gears, more gears, without end? Almost certainly not, and the reason is sitting in the electric truck. Here's why. A diesel needs all those gears because it only makes useful power inside that narrow rev range. An electric motor has no such problem. It produces strong pulling power from a dead stop all the way up to high speed. There is no narrow sweet spot to protect. And that means an electric truck like the Tesla Semi, the Volvo FH Electric, or the Freightliner e-Cascadia needs just one fixed gear, or at most two. No range change, no splitter, no double H pattern at all. For the diesel and hydrogen trucks that will stick around for heavy long-distance work, the direction is refined 12 and 13 speed automated boxes with very fine ratios, all run by increasingly clever software. Continuously variable transmissions have been explored, but the sheer torque of a heavy truck makes them brutally hard to build at that scale. So the real future probably splits in two: electric trucks with almost no gearbox for regional and shorter runs, and highly refined automated boxes for the heavy long haul, where energy density still rules everything. So there it is. Trucks went from 4 gears to 18, and now they may be heading back down to 1. Not because engineers ran out of ideas, but because the job itself kept changing. Heavier loads, fussier engines, tighter rules, and every extra ratio brought a little more efficiency. Engineering follows necessity. The road sets the problem, and the gearbox is the answer. If you got something out of this, hit subscribe, because there's a lot more coming your way. And I want to hear from the drivers watching. 18-speed manual, or let the computer do the shifting? Drop it in the comments. Thanks for watching.